Miami! To mission control, we have liftoff. Phinhub! Phinhub! We talking Dolphins City! Phinhub, Phinhub! Yeah! It's that Dolphins show! Phinhub!
Welcome to the Phinhub Show, the one NFL podcast you can't leave off your roster. Now here's your host, Joey and Kevin Tejido.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Phinhub Show powered by BetUS. Guys, if you haven't already, make sure to check out BetUS and use code YouTube150 for a 150% bonus on your first deposit. The next two will be for up to 125% bonuses. So make sure to check out BetUS and take advantage of that offer. That's YouTube 150 on BetUS. So the Miami Dolphins do not make a move at trade deadline, for better or worse. Me personally, I think it was a good decision just to stand pat. I think the Miami Dolphins have a lot of really good talent on the roster at this point, whether they're injured or not. And if the Miami Dolphins were to make any more moves with the trade deadline, I think it would just jeopardize them for the future. So I do think it was the right approach just to stand pat, see what we have with this roster for the rest of this season. Because who knows? I don't think there's any drastic move that you can make right now that would impact us for the rest of the year and bring us to the playoffs and even some kind of like deeper run.
Yeah, and that drastic move would have had to have been a stud defensive end in Max Crosby or Myles Garrett. Not to say that they were actually available, but, you know, there was some buzz around there. But, yeah, there's no point in beating a dead horse. If you continue investing draft capital, your future, into a year that, you know, basically you've underperformed. You know, the context is you've lost a lot of your players. You've lost Bradley Chubb, you lost Jalen Phillips, Jevon, Holland, Sealer's been out. You know what I'm saying? All these stud defensive players have been out. I think it's funny, right? Because we went through that stretch without Tua. The offense was underperforming, and the defense was performing at a higher level than we anticipated, right? And then, you know, Tua comes back. Now it's the offense performing back to what it was basically a year ago almost, you know what I'm saying? And the defense is underperforming. But, I mean, the context is there. It's all injuries. So, you know, going back to that statement of, you know, no sense of beating a dead horse, you're not gonna flip that thing overnight. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to get one player and they're going to make all the difference in the world. So, you know, there is still some level of optimism. I like that the Dolphins haven't given up on the season. They didn't trade some key players, like even a Teron Armstead maybe that, you know, is at the later stage of his career that might want to play for a contender. I'm pretty sure he had some say in that as well. They might have gotten some calls for him, and they might have asked him. You never know. And he was like, "No, I want to stay in Miami. I want to see this thing through." And same goes with Calais Campbell. So
yeah, I think for sure we were getting calls for Calais Campbell. So, and I do think that Calais had a say in that, which is surprising because the Dolphins' future, at least for the season, doesn't look too positive.
Yeah.
They would have to essentially win out. I think at most we can lose one more game for the season to realistically make the playoffs here.
Or a chance.
For a chance to make the playoffs. And so it's not a great outlook, but I guess it does say something to the culture, the coaching staff, the rest of the players, and
the
how they
belief in the
feel
system,
about
right?
How they feel about each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like that. It's very positive. But, you know, we do have some possible news. Craycraft could be coming back for the Rams game. We know OBJ has gotten more involved as of late. He had his best performance. Not that it was much, but he did connect with 204. I believe it was a couple of passes there.
Yeah, and you saw him out there a little more than previous weeks, so that was encouraging, right?
Yeah, and I think that Craycraft coming back, you know, there was a lot of talk about wide receiver 3 for the Miami Dolphins coming into the season, obviously with Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle, and then is it going to be OBJ? For a while, it was maybe Eric Ezukanma. Braxton Berrios was thrown in there. Now he's injured reserve there, season-ending injury there. we had so many names, but River Craycraft, I really think he had the best offseason out of all of these receivers and is really going to be that number 3 receiver for the Miami Dolphins, not so much because of his receiving ability, but he's actually a really good blocker, and that's what this team needs more of at this point. We have amazing weapons like Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle, devon achane has been killer for Tua since he's come back. So River Craycraft adds another element. He's a willing blocker, a guy that knows the system very well, had spent time with Mike McDaniel even before the Miami Dolphins. So this is a guy that Tua trusts, Mike McDaniel trusts, and the rest of the offense can get behind, and I'm sure they're loving that River Craycraft is going to be coming back into the lineup.
Yeah, not to just get into looking at the future, right? Like next year, because you kind of have to look ahead when the season has been such a disappointment, right? But getting River Craycraft back, him continuing to develop that chemistry with Tua, which we know they have a great chemistry. Tua was talking about him maybe a week ago, a few days ago. Basically, talking him up. He loves River. They had that connection in camp. He looked great in the preseason as well on that touchdown catch. Tua hit him in stride, and
where he got injured somehow.
Unfortunately, he got injured.
Yeah.
But yeah, what does this mean for OBJ? I think that's the best question. Does OBJ continue to get these looks, or is River Craycraft just going to come in and be the bona fide third receiver for us? I guess time will tell. We don't really have the answer to that. I think what we've seen throughout this process of the podcast, we don't have the answer to anything because things completely turn around, and it's just kind of a wait-and-see approach. But there's a level of optimism that I have with this team moving forward. I love the fact that we have Jonnu Smith for the foreseeable future. I think he's got another year on his contract. We'll probably bring back River Craycraft. If not this year, I think we come in next year with a great mentality, with some health on our side, and maybe that would be, the season that we can start doing some things,
Yeah, it should have been this year, but the injuries, I think, just really
too much to overcome. And look, and I don't want to continue sounding like I'm making excuses for this team, because I'm not. I'm just as disappointed as everyone else. But you name the names that we've named on this podcast, and you talk about Tua being out that amount of games, and people want to talk all this mess about Tua. He did not choose to go on injured reserve. Like everyone said, the Dolphins did it for optics. They did it just so that they don't get some backlash from the league or from the fans. You don't care about Tua's health. Honestly, I think he would have been ready to go the next week. He might have been ready to go for that Titans game. Like these are key games that he could have won, and this season would have looked completely different, even with these last 2 losses.
Yeah, and it's tough, because we're relying now, or not relying on, but we're using the what could have been and what if and
which is annoying, and I agree with it.
That's the part that gets exhausting as a Miami Dolphins fan. It's always something.
Yeah.
And the offense looks good, the defense looks bad, the defense looks good, the offense looks bad, then it's special teams. It's always something for the Miami Dolphins.
It's never all 3 phases just clicking as one,
Yeah, Mike McDaniel has an amazing play calling performance and probably his best coaching performance as a Miami Dolphins head coach, and
wasn't enough.
It gets rubbed out by a terrible defensive play there by Jordyn Poyer. So it's very unfortunate, but you got to look on the brighter side here. It's not like you're going to switch teams and now we're going to start rooting for the Kansas City Chiefs or whatever. We are Miami Dolphins fans, so we are looking forward to next year, and hopefully we can have, by the grace of the football gods, a more healthy season, complete season from Tua and the rest of the offense, the offensive line, defense, on all fronts, really. And I think that everyone can see now, if this team were healthy, on offense, you saw what the offense looks like.
Yeah.
We weren't missing. Like, we were doing our thing. Tua was wheeling and dealing.
Tua was hitting everything, bro.
On defense, obviously, they looked terrible last week, but the true context is we were missing 5 starters. Mm-hmm. And that's huge. And 4 out of those 5 guys are 4 out of the best 5 defenders that we have on defense.
And you can make the argument for any one of those guys that they are the best player on defense. It's crazy, right? Yeah. That's how good they are.
So there's a lot of context there. Mm-hmm. Zach Sealer will be back for Monday Night Football.
It's looking like it.
I think he will be.
I think he will be too.
He will be back, and I think that's going to be important for the defense, for the Dolphins going forward, because he's a leader on that side of the ball. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Well, I did want to ask you a quick question. Do you think, obviously, I feel like Mike McDaniel is going to be the coach of this team going into next year as well. Do you think maybe he has somewhat of a blueprint on offense? And I know these teams change every year and personnel and on all this stuff, right? But do you think maybe he took a step forward as a coach and seeing how he can beat these good teams when the Bills and whatever other teams that he's going to play that are above 500? Do you think that he made that? Because as much of a loss, as much of a stab in the heart, it felt like losing that game, it also felt like a win because we were just very competitive the whole game, So
yeah, it's unfortunate that it ended in a loss, but I get what you're saying. It's just, it's unfortunate. But I do think that he's taken a step forward. I do think he's going to be the coach for next season as well, just because we just extended him. I think Chris Greer is going to be the guy to go. And
you think he's actually going to get canned?
I think if they're going to start making moves, it's going to start with him.
We're talking about a guy that's been in the organization for 20 years,
right?
20 plus years.
Yeah, unsuccessfully.
I understand.
And
I'm just saying, I don't know if Ross's connection with him or he's got.
Completely fair. Like, I know everybody wants some action because things have not been going our way. So they point at Chris Greer and they say, like, yo, this is the guy that's got to go. But if you really look at his moves, a lot of them have been very solid.
Yeah.
It's just, if it wasn't for injuries, things could be a lot different. And it's just the unfortunate part of the game. And I think that that's his argument for not being fired. So, and then the argument for him being fired would be, well, bro, you've been here for 20 years in the franchise, and we've looked pretty bad.
I think,
or nothing has happened.
Yeah, I think the approach needs to be a GM that's better at finding those young studs, right?
Yeah.
And I want to say I think it's Louis Riddick. I would love to see him be the GM on this team. He's actually a guy that loves Tua, so we already know that Tua will be the guy. I support that 100%. As long as you have a contingency plan and you have someone that can back him up, that can win you games, that can step up in the event that he is not ready to go, or God forbid another concussion, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that would be cool. I don't know if you have any other guys in mind, or would that be the home run hit?
That works for me. But going back to your first question with Mike McDaniel, I do think that he took steps forward without having Tua in the lineup. He saw how difficult it was to move the ball with any other quarterback. So that's something to keep an eye on. But really, I think he started to lean on the run a little bit more, started to trust the run a little bit more. And this was the first game against the Bills, against any team really, where I've really seen a full game running the ball and passing the ball, and they were really like in tandem. It was just a great it was a thing of beauty to see. That development where he could stick to the run, pass off of the run. I thought that was really, really nice. Yeah, and hopefully that's a trend that continues to take place.
Yeah, it almost seems like he had his game plan and he just stuck to it. He didn't get flustered or in the middle of the game. He's like, oh, bro, I got to do something different because this isn't working. All right, let's pass the ball 3 times now when the run's already working. You know what I'm saying? So definitely, I feel like he was passing off of the run, which was, dude, and Tua is the perfect quarterback for that, honestly. And it goes back to his Bama days too. With Najee Harris, bro. Like, he would, they'd run really well, and then that's when he would be dealing. Right after the run, he'd just hit you with some nice stuff because the defense has to play you differently. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they're not expecting things. And another big thing with Tua that I think people really undervalue is his playmaking ability and his ball handling. I think it's fantastic. You see Baldy breakdowns. People are like, just their jaws drop off of the things that he can do, these little shovel passes, these no looks, you know what I'm saying? He's got the ball, and then he's acting like he's gonna hand it off in front of him. Then he does a little flick behind his back, putting it in the perfect spot. Which I know it's not the ball getting thrown 60 yards down the field, but that in itself is something. You know what I'm saying? So
it's completely different from what we've been seeing the few weeks without Tua. So I was happy to watch some pretty football again.
Yeah.
Because it was miserable without him there in the lineup.
Just one more thing that I want to bring up. The Rams ended up trading Tre'Davious White, their cornerback. So maybe that's something we could pick on throughout the game. I'm not really sure. I don't want to really make any guesses or predictions, but I do think it's really important that Sealer's back. He's going to add some much needed, pressure in the middle of the because, if you give Matthew Stafford a little bit of time, bro, he's going to make magic happen.
Yeah.
And he's got guys like Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua on his side that, he can really light us up there. So let's hope Ramsey has a plan to shut one of these guys down. Maybe they move him on Puka or Cooper. I'm not sure who they would line him up against, but let's hope they don't get an opportunity to really pick on Smith this game because it was a little crazy. But like the last game, seeing how Holland was giving him all he can handle. So
yeah,
let's see what happens.
Well, yeah, we'll see we'll have a breakdown for the Rams soon this coming week, but Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for today. If you guys haven't checked out BetUS, make sure to check out BetUS and use code YouTube150 for 150% bonus on your first deposit. The next 2 deposits will be for 125% bonuses, so make sure to check out BetUS and use code YouTube150 to make good on that offer. But that's going to do it for today. If you guys haven't already, make sure to give the video a thumbs up, subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thumbs up.